good.
There we go. Now I got a microphone. See? Gotta check these things. What I was asking when I first opened the stream was, is the music too loud? And then I was like, oh, let's see what my mic levels are. And then my mic wasn't working at all. So yeah, just let me know if the music is too loud. Just want to balance that out before the stream starts. Welcome, fellow bald guy. Music is fine. Sounds good. I'll bump it down just a little bit, just to be safe. I'd rather you guys be able to hear my voice than the music. What was that? Music seems fine. Sounds good. Alright, so, welcome. Thank you all for joining me here today. I have kind of a fun thing that I'm working on. It's something I wanted to share with you guys. It's not something we talk about all that often on our channel, because it's not as relevant with my Pokemon stuff. but it is still very much a big part of my process as an artist, and something that's actually a little bit fun, which is taking reference pictures. Now, like I said, I don't do this really often for Fakemon stuff, but for other artwork like this commission that I have, it's very helpful and sometimes even necessary to take a good reference photo and do something kind of like what I did here, which is kind of composite certain elements into one Photoshop file to help better get an idea of what kind of thing you're drawing. So if you can see, that's me. It's a reference picture that Claire helped me take yesterday. And down in the corner here is the subject. I don't know if you guys can see that very well. Let me actually, let me see if I can open up a bigger image here. So right in the middle here is what the client sent me. And what they have is this candy night, which I was already excited. Like, as soon as they said candy night, I really loved that idea. So they gave me this idea for a candy night. I don't know if they did this illustration themselves or if this is another artist's work that they commissioned to do. But they gave me this as sort of like a jumping off point. The character has this like bubblegum armor and this rock candy sword that is sort of corrupting their body and taking over their soul. And so I also put together this, I guess, a mood board reference sheet kind of thing. This isn't really so much for like specific references as much as it is to sort of composite a bunch of ideas together. You know, so like for pose and for armor, I grabbed Arturius from Dark Souls because this sort of like slouching, like almost like half dead pose that they gave me in the reference here. I was like, oh, that kind of reminds me of Arturius. Then, of course, I grabbed some, like, rock candy stuff. I gave Arturius a giant rock candy sword here. And then grabbed some pictures of, like, bubblegum wrappers, because it's kind of hard to tell in this illustration, but the cloth parts of the armor are supposed to be bubblegum. And so, yeah, then I went ahead and I took this picture of myself so that I could specifically get things like lighting and more like detailed parts of anatomy, like the hands and the legs and stuff. Like, poses like this are complicated. The other thing I wanted to do is get an idea of how the fabric would drape. I bought this cloak actually for a Halloween costume a while ago, and I'm glad I'm getting some use out of it because I don't wear it that often. But it's perfect for something like this. And then, you know, gave myself a rock candy sword, and then I just used like a basic brush tool to put in some secondary lighting coming off of the sword, which will come in later. And let me now show you the rough sketch. I'm still in the sketching process. I have a little bit more yet to do, and that's what we're going to pick up today. So sit back, enjoy, and if you have any questions, feel free to ask. What brush do I use for the line art? So when I'm working on these kinds of pieces, I don't really do line art so much. When I sketch, I use a brush called Habak Sketch. This is a brush pack that I bought online. I'm sure if you look up Habak sketch brushes, you can find it. I think it was like maybe $5. And then I also like to use, for cleaner lines, later on, I use the round brush. I don't know if this is what we ended up calling it in the sketch pack, in the Subjectively Sketcher pack, but this is a Subjectively brush that I made. But you'll see, I don't really do line work. I sketch, and then I paint under the sketch, and then I sort of mix it all down into one layer, and I kind of clean up my sketch, sort of working backwards. It's a very... It's something that a digital artist would like to do, but something a traditional artist couldn't really do. It's I don't know if it's really possible to do this traditionally, but it's a great traditional, it's a great digital artist trick that I like doing. So could do it with oils. You could paint under line work with oil paint.
If you do a wash, it's a transparent layer with top of it, so it has that effect.
Hmm.
You can save like that type of charcoals.
Actually, it probably is more of a traditional artist technique than it is a digital artist technique, because I feel like a lot of digital artists just go straight for the line work and fill tool. Would I accept a 3D printed minifigure of Titanitrop if I sent it to you? You know what? Yeah, hell yeah. I would love that. Titanitrop is one of my favorite Pokemon that I did for the Mazda region. And I'm actually so much more happy with it now that I did that redesign. I know I sort of snuck that one in there. I wasn't planning on redrawing Titanitrop. But then when I did, I was like, well, I can't. I have to put this in the video at some point. Candy meant the same thing as a sweet cold rock in the UK. Oh, see, I'm wondering if the person who commissioned this meant that too. Oh, I should check in. I'll send them a sketch and make sure that we're on the same page. I assumed because it was green and crystalline that they meant rock candy. Rock candy... The kind of rock candy that I'm familiar with is literally they take a wooden stick and it's some sort of chemistry experiment. You have sugar crystals and you mix them with something else, and the sugar crystals actually grow on the stick. It's cool. You can buy, like, at least here in the US, you can buy little amateur chemistry kits where you can make your own rock candy. And if you're really cool, this is... young kid, you pretend it's like crystal meth or something. You can make your own meth. But don't do that, kids. Don't make meth. That's not cool. But if you were cool, you would get one of those rock candy making kits and pretend you were making meth. But don't make real meth. I know Walter White's got everyone wanting to make meth because he's so cool. It's not cool, kids. I'll have to look up what a rock sweet is. Let me investigate here. Oh, they look like rocks. Jeez. They literally look like rocks. Oh, that's cool.
Are you looking at the sugar rocks?
Yeah, these. Have you ever seen these?
Yeah, so in the Midwest.
Out in the Midwest.
They're kind of burning for tourist attractions, so there's lots of like tea.
Oh, okay, that makes sense.
Shops there.
Well, it looks like when you go to like a natural history museum and they have like those big things in the gift shop where you can just like grab a little bag and fill it up with assorted rocks.
Yeah. You're definitely gonna have extra stickers.
Oh, okay, but there's also this, and someone's saying this in chat right now, there's also the, like the sticks, like I've seen like the Japanese candy where they roll it. You ever see these? They make like a huge glob of it, and then they layer it, and then they roll it, and then they cut it up into little slices. And you can put little shapes on the inside. Like you can make it look like there's a little dog on the inside.
Oh, yes.
Okay, yes, now I'm confident. Thank you, Chad. I'm confident we're on the same page about rock candy. It's interesting, you know, when I get commission requests, you know, as long as the person is speaking English, I usually assume that they're American, but there are those little cultural divides. Things like rock candy. Even if, you know, you're from the UK or from the US, mostly similar cultures. I hope that doesn't sound insensitive saying this. I've been to the UK and I've lived in the US, and for the most part things are similar. But then you never know. Sometimes rock candy means something different over there. Yeah, I looked up Rock Sweet and I found these candies that look like rocks, like assorted, polished rocks. But I can't find out any more about that. Maybe they're not. Maybe those are actually rocks. Okay, maybe those are actually rocks. I don't know. I'm gonna get too distracted looking up different kinds of rock candy. I should actually work on this commission. What makes a good character design great? Ooh, we're asking the tough questions here. Well, that's a very open-ended question, but I think the best answer I can give is a great character design. Well, let's say a good character design is a character design that people can get excited about. A great character design is a character design that fits the world that it's supposed to be in, fits the role that it plays in the story, and does something new. So I would say a good example of this, because I love the character design in Overwatch, a good character design would be like Genji, right? Like Genji is cool. It definitely appeals to a pretty general audience. You know, a lot of people like ninjas, a lot of people like robots, a lot of people like robot ninjas. He's got the sex appeal. He's got an interesting backstory. He's got like the cool skins and everything. So that's a good character design. And then I would say like a great character design would be something like Orisa, where it fits the story. It's like, you know, a girl and her robot, right? Made by a little genius engineer. And she looks friendly. She looks strong. She looks like she can protect you. She fits her role in the story, right? She fits her role in the game. And she's something new, right? We see a lot of mechs. We see a lot of robots, but I can't think of any robots that have this like African tribal feel baked into their design. Like, that's not something we see very often, and that kind of novelty to the character excites me. So I would say that's a good design versus a great design. In a nutshell, of course, there's a lot more to it than just that, but if I had to sum it up. How do I get good at proportions? It takes a lot of practice. I think the best way to get good with human proportions is just to do life studies. Make sure that you have a good reference picture and draw human characters in a lot of different poses, right? So, like, you know, drawing a human standing just straight is a good way to get a general idea of proportions, because, you know, you see how much distance there is between the elbow and the shoulder, right? How much distance there is between the chin and the chest. And that's pretty straightforward, but then that's just one body type. That's just one pose. Then draw a really short person looking around their shoulder. Then draw a really muscular person doing some sort of flex. Then draw, you know, a heavier person that's lying backwards. Then do, you know, so you got to be able to understand anatomy at its core levels in order to really understand proportions, because everyone's body is shaped differently. But for the most, and that's not even true either. I was going to say our skeletal structures are all similar, but no, people have different skeletal structures too. But if you can understand the way the most commonly occurring skeletal structure and muscular structure works, you can sort of warp and change that to meet your needs with your character designs. So, and the best way to do that is to do a lot of life studies. Or, you know, even if you don't, you know, have access to a live human, you know, there are plenty of images on the internet of humans posing specifically with the intention of using their images as reference. What is it? Dork? Art dork? A dorcas? It sounds really no, it's got dork in it or something. Look up DeviantArt. A dorka stock. Yeah, they have tons of different bodies. They have tons of different poses. Good lighting. Like they post pictures of photo shoots of human figures specifically for people to use for their illustrations. Of course, what I mean when I say if you don't have a live human for reference, I mean like, you know, if you can't ask one of your friends, pose for me and let me draw you, or like, you know, if you go to an art school, they'll have you do live model drawing. Also, just like books, like you can buy, like I've never really loved how to draw books, but there are books that aren't just like how to draw, they're more like more informative, you know, guides with much more detailed instructions on how to master technical skills. The other thing that's important to remember as an illustrator is not to get too hung up on technical things. Like, if your goal with your illustrations is to have, you know, real accurate human anatomy and stuff like that, then those things are important. And those things are important either way, because in order to abstract anatomy, you need to be able to understand it. But, I mean, you don't have to be a brilliant, you know, like, classical style illustrator to be a successful illustrator. I mean, look at, what's his name? Deadpool guy. Rob Liefeld. Look at Rob Liefeld. Don't look at Rob Liefeld. That's not a good example. He is technically successful, but I would not call that. I don't know. I don't want to diminish his work. Just don't aspire to be like Rob Liefeld. Aim higher. Start at Rob Liefeld and then aim higher. It's looking really sweet, thank you. I don't know if that was a pun intended, but I appreciate it. Either way. Yeah, it's that Captain America one is definitely the worst. Like, not all of his illustrations are terrible, and they definitely work for that style of illustration. But I do think the biggest problem with Rob Liefeld is that people who like comic books but aren't super interested in art look at him and are like, oh, I don't need to be a good drawer to be a good comic book artist. And you don't. But like, I don't know, it's a complicated thing. I'm like hearing the voice of one of my professors at Mass Art who was so like anti-technical skill. He was like, yeah, learn technical skills, but like don't feel like you have to draw perfectly all the time. Like, as long as it fits for the tone of what it is that you're drawing, then your skills don't really matter. I've been thinking about Nimona right? They just turned it into a Netflix original series, and I was looking at the original comic, and like you could look at those illustrations from that comic and say these aren't good illustrations, like there's no sense of anatomy or anything like that, but it really works for the tone of the comic. Like you can't really picture it any other way. Oh, well, I guess now you can because they changed the style in the animated movie. But like, that's a good example of how like you don't need insanely traditional illustration skills in order to become a good and successful illustrator, or even just to get what you want out onto paper. I think what I'm gonna do is, all right, tips and tricks time. If you're doing something like a weapon, right, for a commission, and the weapon is on a pretty like straightforward pose, like it's a big part of the illustrations, big part of the commission that you can see the weapon clearly. What I like to do is I like to go over here, and this is a digital trick. It wouldn't really work too well if you're working traditionally, but I like to go into here, and I like to turn on my drawing guide, and I like to pop on Symmetry, and I can design the sword in the Symmetry tool, and then sort of adjust it in the sketch. Because like if you're trying to design something like a weapon that has a lot of intricate small little details, it's really hard to design that in a dynamic pose, like angled or foreshortened or something like that. So I find it easier to design it first using the Symmetry tool, which makes it very easy, and then go ahead and try to pose it the way you want it. Now again, if you want your sword to be asymmetrical, then the Symmetry tool won't work. But you can still do things like, okay, so like maybe the details on the hilt aren't going to be perfectly symmetrical, but the hilt itself is going to be. So I can, like, I want to put crystals on this part here, but those are going to be asymmetrical, so I'll leave that for now. But the hilt itself, right? That's gonna be a Symmetry, and actually, I wanna make it look like those Candy Rock sticks made out of wood, because it's clear that the artwork that the client gave me wanted the hilt to look like it was made out of wood. Something that's always worth keeping in mind when you're doing a commission for a client is, and this is something, where you have to be able to communicate with your client. But, when a client gives you a character that they want you to illustrate, and they have something like this, like a pre-existing rendered artwork of their character, always feel like it's okay to take some artistic liberties with it. Obviously, check, make sure your client is okay with it. Send them progress of your sketch. But when you're hired as a professional illustrator, it's not always the case, but usually the person who hired you did so because they believe that you have good ideas. They're not just paying you to redraw what already exists, they're paying you for your ideas. And so bring in some new ideas. If you feel like a certain part of the design that they showed you would look better in a slightly different way, make sure to try it. Try it, show it to them, and chances are they'll like it because they hired you so for your expertise, for your experience, and for your ideas. Now, it's not always the case. I have worked for clients where I tried taking artistic liberties and I showed it to them and they were like, oh no, do exactly what we told you. And it's like, all right, fair enough. And sometimes that's just how it's going to be. But whenever you can, take some subtle artistic liberties.
How would you feel if I took the artistic liberty of turning the AC on?
Is that the artistic liberty? We can take that artistic liberty. Thank you for checking with the client first. When doing soft shading or blending, I tend to overdo it. Is there a balance I can achieve? So, blending with values is not something I ever encourage. I think that a lot of times, and this illustration, I don't want to put this artist on blast, but this is a good example of not really what it is a lack of understanding of what the light source is and how it's interacting with solid objects. So, people will smudge and smear their lights and their shadows because they're not using a strong enough reference image to give them an idea of how light interacts with surface. Doing light studies is super important because you get an idea of how light actually interacts, and you'll find that on most surfaces, light is much harder. And when I say harder, I mean it makes clear, distinct shapes. So for example, let me give you an example. My deck box here, all right? Look at how the light is hitting this, all right? If you were to paint this right now, you could have a nice, strong, clean line of white light right up here where the light is hitting it the strongest, all right? You could paint in these reflective images on the side in one clean brush stroke, okay? And then this dark here, this could all be one shade too. So, and that's, this is a very clean geometric shape. Let's say if we took little Appleton over here, right? Okay? The way the light is hitting it, there are some clear geometric shapes being made. Right on the helmet here, on the red part, there's a big yellow triangle, right? That's a triangle, that's a shape. Paint that shape. Instead of taking, white and smudging it over the surface, paint a nice hard shape. Because you'll find, and obviously it changes from subject matter to subject matter, but you'll find, especially if the subject is a hard subject, that light hits that subject in hard, clean shapes. Here's another example. Take my wedding ring off for a second. Metal surfaces. Let's see if it can autofocus here. Come on, fella. It's not going to autofocus. It's too small. Well. Pick up something metal in your household right now, a spoon or a piece of jewelry or something, and look at how the light hits it and see those geometric shapes on the surface. Now, of course, if you have something like this, if you have a plush, the light hits it not so hard, right? Here you can kind of see smooth transitions from light to dark. It's sort of, this is where using a blending tool might be better. But even here, where the light is the strongest, you can still see a pretty clear line between where it's darkest and where it's lightest. And you could paint that in all one big shape, rather than taking, just like the soft brush tool and using that to create light. Then if you look on the other end of the spectrum again now here, if we look at this tag, which has got this sort of iridescent shine to it because it's made of some sort of shiny fabric, you see a nice clean line of light, right? You see that clean line of light there? That can be one shape. That can be a shape rather than a blur tool. So, that is my advice for painting light and darkness. That's also why I don't like when people use the word shading when they're describing painting in lights and darkness, because I think it oversimplifies the process. I used to feel that way too, where it's like you have your illustration, you put in your color, and then you do the shading, right? But the shading is part of the whole thing. It shouldn't really be an afterthought. It shouldn't be the last thing you do. Blocking in light is something that needs to happen as early in the sketching process as possible. So don't make it like the final touch. If you want to add light and darkness, make sure you're considering that from the very beginning. And like what I'm working on right now is a good example. making sure that you have a nice strong reference, like my little self down here with the light coming in, and then my secondary lighting that I painted over this image. That will give me an idea of how I can abstract or stylize the way light is hitting the subject. So hopefully that's helpful. Where'd my reference picture go? There it is. Double check, make sure the music still sounds good. Sometimes OBS messes with me and the music all of a sudden gets much louder and people can't hear my voice anymore. I just want to make sure that nothing has changed. Have I ever considered doing a masterclass series? You know, we used to get offers. I don't know if it was masterclass, some other like online tutoring thing that they offered me to make my own classes. And at the time, I wasn't interested just because it felt like a lot of work. And I was like, I kind of give lessons on my art channel. And I think rather than doing those, I would rather just make more in-depth videos about things like that, or talk about them more on my streams. Just because I prefer making YouTube content. But I definitely have considered it. I'm glad to hear that my ramblings are actually helpful. What is my favorite color or color combination? I love pink. I think my favorite color is like a nice bubblegum pink. I don't think I have anything in the room with me right now. But yeah, oh actually yeah. Claire's nails.
That's fine.
I can't really see. Claire's nails are like Barbie pink right now.
Is this worth it?
Yeah, it's worth it.
I
Oh,
don't
it's
think
not.
you can see
The
it.
color's not coming through on the
It's the,
camera. Well, oh, you know, okay. Look up Shiny Hypno. Shiny Hypno is like my favorite color of pink. But I also really like ombres of pink into orange, like a nice sunset sherbet combo. Oh yeah, or this love ball. This is another. That's still not coming great.
It's that much yellow.
Yeah.
It's like 3 lessons for everyone.
Yeah, the way color interactivity, but also my camera's not great. That's also part of it. But yeah, like the love ball pink is pretty great. Here you go, my love. But yeah, I love pinks. Have I ever needed to completely redo or at least do some minor to major changes to a finished commission? Yeah. It's usually my own fault. So I think I've told you guys about Knights and Summons. It's a company that has been making, it's an indie company that's been making their own card game, and I've been doing illustrations for them, and they're fantastic. I love working with them because they usually just give me a vague idea and they're like, just go for it, which is great. It's a lot of fun. And I did a lot of commissions for them, and for one of their commissions, I got very interpretive with the idea. I can actually show you. And I didn't give them any progress shots because in the past I just finished it and they liked it and we were good. So I never asked them if this is what they were actually looking for, and because of that, so this is what I drew, and I gave it to them, and they were like, this is cool, but it's not what we were looking for at all. And I ended up having to completely redo it, and I actually don't even remember. What I ended up doing was very different. Was this? This might have been what it ended up as. But yeah, you can, like, it's entirely different. Like, it's a completely different concept. And that was my own fault. I didn't communicate with them while I was doing the illustration. So we were operating on completely different wavelengths. But for the most part, and then I had my Nightmare commission that I worked on years and years and years ago, but that client was one of the hardest people I've ever had to work with for a number of reasons. You know how I was saying that, like, most people, when they hire an illustrator, they're looking for your input and your expertise? That client, not Knights and Summons, but the client I had years and years ago, that client had no interest in my input whatsoever. They just wanted me to draw exactly what they told me to draw, and it was a not fun experience. But yes, going back to the other topic, yes, my favorite color is warm pink, yellow, orange. Some shades of yellow I really don't like. I love warm yellows. I love, like, gold, more orangey yellows. But I really don't like green yellows. That's, like, some of my least favorite colors. Like a really bright neon green or a neon yellow, I am not a big fan. In general, I don't love neon colors. I don't like colors that you would see, like, I don't know, like in a sports mascot store. I don't wear a lot of pink. I think my favorite color to wear is like, oh my god, I'm still on the Symmetry tool. Whoops. I think my favorite color to wear is like blues and reds, like dark blues and reds. Any other art styles, Spider-Verse, cel-shaded Zelda, Pendleton Ward style, that are completely outside my normal ones that I would like to give a shot or expand my repertoire? Well, I think something like Spider-Verse, what that art direction does really well is play with light in super impactful ways, and that is something that I need more practice with. You know, they use art, they use light not just to inform setting, but to inform mood and action. And I mean, all good movies do that, but I think Spider-Verse does it in a very unique way, which, you know, a lot of people are super into. You can learn a lot from that. The other thing I like about Spider-Verse is that they take, and this is a common theme over their entire movie and all of the art in the movie, not just the light specifically, but they take elements from real life and it's almost impressionist. They almost interpret it in a way that's more emotional than it is literal. And that's why parts of those movies that are emotional hit so hard, especially in Spider-Verse 2, where, you know, you see scenes like Miles' bedroom or, you know, the party with his family. Like, it feels like, it's like, yeah, I don't live there. I've never lived in a place like that, but that feels like home. You know, that feels like the safe space. And I love that. I love conveying emotion through setting and lighting and, you know, the interpretation of real life in a more stylized tone. So there's definitely a lot to learn from that style. Chat says hi, Claire. Claire says hi back. No. But you did show your nails. I think some people are kind of behind on the stream. Yeah, Klaus also had really nice art style. Combination of 2D and 3D animation. That looked really nice. Actually, Claire, go over to the stream for a second and see how delayed the stream is. I want to make sure it's not like super behind. So I know some people are in different countries, so like it might take a little bit longer, but it shouldn't really. It's the internet. It's 2023. Just want to make sure it's not a problem on our side. It might be YouTube. It's pretty long. I don't know if that's standard. This commission, I believe, was $200. It's usually around the price range of my commissions. I mean, I want to see, or I want to hear that music done, but it's up to you. Sounds good. Excuse me. What Pokemon from the Mazda region would I want as my partner? From the Mazda region? That's a good question. When I think about a Pokemon to like share my everyday life with, I usually like Pokemon that are a little smaller, so they can, like, you know, be in my house with me. But I also like the idea of having a Crustang, because then I wouldn't have to pay for a car. Or car insurance. Maybe there's Crustang insurance. That'd make for a fun spin-off series to make Pokemon like super disenfranchised Just be like, in the real Pokemon world, you need Pokemon insurance, just in case your Pokemon accidentally burns someone. Or in case you get accidentally burned by a Pokemon. I guess Boinkably, yeah. Pokepanko. Maybe an Adelangler. Be fun having a little fishing monkey. You go out on the water. I'm assuming in this scenario I live in the Maza region. Beautiful tropical paradise. Oh, we can layer different cards to get a 3D effect in Pokemon cards. Oh, that's cool. My thoughts on Elden Ring? I love Elden Ring. Fantastic game. I'm a big fan of all of FromSoft's games. Yeah, that's an incredible game. Fingers crossed for an exciting DLC soon. Channel had 4 or 5 people. What happened to the others? The others moved on. They're doing other things with their lives. When we first made this channel, we were right out of college, and none of us really had jobs. So we kind of did this for fun, but it was like, it was my idea, and it was really, I was really the only one who wanted to do it for a living. And so, you know, as we, got older, and they found other work, they had less and less time for the channel. And we also all lived together at one point too, which we do not anymore. So it was much easier to make videos all together. But we're all still friends. We're all very close friends. We see each other all the time. They just have other jobs. Do I have a favorite environmental setting to make character designs for? It's an interesting question. I don't think I do. I mean, I think my default is like ocean themed stuff. Like, I like the idea of mysterious creatures living at the bottom of the ocean. I have a bit of a prejudice in favor of those kinds of things. So maybe the ocean. But, I like variety. I like to change it up. Have I ever watched One Punch Man? I did actually years ago. You know, I'm usually I don't really like anime, but I had a friend who was really into it, and we watched it together. And I actually liked it. I can't get into shonens, but I like that it was a sort of a parody of the genre, and it didn't really take itself seriously. So I enjoyed that. I've never went back to it, but when I did watch it, I thought it was good. Alright, so now, I was talking about this earlier in the stream, but at this point, I'm not going to do line work over this sketch. Instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to sort of clean up this sketch, because the lines are already here. Everything I wanted, all the gesture, all of the hard edges, all the movement, like in the eye and stuff, that's there. I don't need to draw over that. I just need to clean it up a little bit. And I don't even need to do that. I just like to do that, because I like to have a slightly cleaner design. Or not even a cleaner design, but a cleaner rendering style. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take my technical pen, which is just a default Photoshop brush, and I'm actually probably going to stick with my Habik sketch brush. If you're interested in some of the other brushes that we use, feel free to check out the Gumroad link in our description of this stream. It's got the all of the brush packs that we use, that we made, including the Pokemon ones and the oil painting ones that Claire made. In fact, I'm going to switch over to the round brush that I made for our subjectively sketching pack. I'm actually not sure if we ended up calling it this in the sketch pack. It might be called something different. The round brush that I made in Procreate. Oh, Trusty Sketcher. Yes, I think that is what it's called. And that's just a little bit cleaner. Get all the lines to around the same thickness. Again, that's not super important, because what's going to end up happening is I'm going to paint under this layer, and then I'm going to merge them all down and work on them all in one layer when I start doing colors. Have I ever tried looking up pictures of birds? I have. I've done it. It's a great experience. I like taking pictures of birds, actually. I love drawing wings, and I had a professor when I was in art school who was she's a great illustrator, and her specialty was birds. She loved birds, and she actually had us do an assignment. The class that I took was called Observation to Concept, and it was all about using reference photos to inform your artwork. And she had us do an assignment where we had to draw a bunch of birds, usually in flights, to get a good idea of the anatomy of the wings. And then after we'd done a bunch of life drawings, use what we learned from that to draw something fictional. And I made a team, very TF2 inspired, a team of bird fighters that all had different themes based on what kind of birds they were. And that was a really fun project. That was the project that she liked the most that I did for her class. I loved that professor. I'm still in contact with her, actually. I talk to her from time to time. She retired now, unfortunately. So if there are any mass arts students that have just started, I would recommend Suzanne Barnes, but unfortunately, she is not a professor there anymore. Maybe if you're in your senior year, if you just finished your senior year, you might have had a class with her, but probably not. I think she retired 2 years ago. And I think she only taught sophomore, junior, and senior level classes. I don't know if she taught any freshman classes. Excuse me. Well, you know, this is advice that I think a lot of people don't like to hear because it's not super practical advice. But if you can't find a reference photo that you like, try to go out and take it. I know that's a ton of work, and a lot of people don't have the time for that. And to be quite frank, I don't usually have the time for that either. But I like taking pictures everywhere I go. You know, we live in an era where we have cameras on us 24/7, so it's not a hard thing to take photos. So let me actually, like, I was just at the zoo the other day. I have a membership to my local zoo, and every time I go there, I make sure to take a ton of pictures because I always like to have access to some reference photos. Took this picture there at the zoo. They do these bird shows where they have like a bird trainer, and at the end of the show, you can. Oh, you're not going to be able to see this on my phone screen, but oh yeah, you can see it. You can tip the crow. You can give the crow some cash. So there's Claire tipping the local performing crow. And if you go through that live photo, there's some good photos of him with his wings spread. Do you remember what the crow's name was? He had a cute name. But yeah, if you have a zoo or a local aviary or even a pet shop that you can go to and take some good reference pictures, it's fun. I like to. I'm not a photographer by any stretch of the imagination, but I like taking pictures. And even if you don't use them as reference photos, it's just a fun activity to go out. It's a good mental health break, I think, to go look at animals. Do I plan on making educational videos or make another project like Mermaid World, or both? Both, actually. In fact, the next big project I want to do for the YouTube channel that I've already kind of started is to make my own collectible monster concept and design characters and the setting for that story, which will take place in the same universe as Mermaid and Apoctober, so I can use the Enigmorphs as sort of the collectible monsters, which I'm very excited for. I hope the majority of the fans on Subjectively are excited for that too. But yeah, I want to make some more videos like I was talking about before. I want to make some more videos where I do a little bit more explicit advice for art. We already made a video. Claire actually made it, edited and wrote it, and shot most of it for advice on art school, because we get a question a lot. We get the question, is it worth it to go to art school? So we made sort of a whole video explaining our experience with art school and sort of giving pros and cons on the topic. And I think that's a good example. That video is a good example of the direction we want to take our content going forward. Of course, that video has significantly fewer views than like our Pokemon stuff, but we're expecting that as part of the transition. Still want to do some Pokemon stuff. I'm actually planning on doing a collaboration with some artists, some other Pokemon YouTubers, to sort of dust off a Subjectively classic where we redesign Pokemon, real Pokemon, official Pokemon that we don't like. Our first video on Subjectively was redesigning Pokemon we don't like. And I've been thinking about revisiting that subject for a while, and I think that want to do that. It would be fun to do that with some other artists that were into Pokemon. Do I know if that's a crow or a raven? I think it's a crow. Claire would know. Was our that was a raven? Yeah, it has a little white. Claire says it's a raven. Claire's the resident ornithologist. Guy in the reference photo looks kind of familiar. Yeah, good looking guy, isn't he? I like his outfit. Man, I found out a little cool piece of history and I guess biology. I was reading or watching a video last night. Reading. Who reads? I was watching a video about. Oh, I already forgot his name. Porphyros? Hold on. I'm gonna find the right name so I don't mess this up. So you guys can look it up yourself. Porphyrios. Porphyrios was the name of a giant whale that terrorized the water off the coast of Constantinople during the age of the Roman Empire. And it was literally like a monster from folklore. It was this giant whale. We believe that it was a sperm whale. There was also a theory that it might have been an unusually large orca, but that seems less likely. But we believe it was a giant sperm whale that somehow ended up in the bay and stayed there for over 50 years. And anytime you crossed that bay, there was a chance that your boat would be attacked and sunk by this giant whale. And I just find that incredibly interesting. And this was a known phenomenon. This actually happened. It was recorded by several different people on several different accounts during a span of, like we said, about 50 years. And they were never able to kill it. It only ended up dying when it accidentally beached itself. It was chasing dolphins. According to this historical record, it was chasing dolphins. And it beached itself. And the locals promptly chopped it up and ate it. Because why wouldn't you? I mean, if some giant whale had been terrorizing the harbor for 50 years, and you were an ancient Roman, I mean, gotta eat that shit, right? Definitely gives you powers. Definitely get some awesome mythological powers from eating that. Bought myself a tiny Dreadnought. That's adorable. I love little Pokemon figures. I haven't bought myself a Pokemon figure in a long time. If they ever make like a Koraidon, like, you know, they do those big showcase figures, the elaborate, fancy figures that are like 12 inches tall. If they make a Koraidon one of those, I'm buying that shit. I don't care if it's $400, I'm buying that shit. Hopefully by the time they make that, I have more money. Can whales get rabies? It would make sense for the behavior of this whale if it had some sort of mental illness induced by a disease, but I don't know if whales can get rabies. That'd be bad news if a whale could get rabies, because doesn't rabies cause a fear of water? What do you do if you're a whale and you have a fear of water? I guess you beat yourself. I guess that would be it. But he lived for 50 years. I think most animals that have rabies don't live for very long. And again, I don't know if whales can get rabies. I don't know if there's anything that could spread rabies to a whale. Although it does make me think of that episode of Primal with the giant Titanosaurus or whatever it was, the Brachiosaurus, that had that disease that made it go crazy. Like, you know, some giant animal that would normally be harmless just suddenly becomes insanely violent and hell-bent on destroying things. I think in general it's probably not a good idea to eat raw whale meat off the beach, whether it has rabies or not. So it's safe to say that the people who ate that whale, you know, were probably at the very least punished with some serious intestinal discomfort. At most, they might have died. But yeah, if you find a dead whale on the beach, don't eat it. Don't even cook it. Definitely don't eat it raw. But I think in general, good rule of thumb, if it's washed up dead on the beach, don't eat it. That's some more advice. We give art advice here, but we also give life advice. Don't eat dead things that you find on the beach. If you're gonna eat something out of the water, catch it while it's still alive, and then kill it, and then eat it. I don't advise doing that either. Soy boy vegetarian right here. But if you really need to eat something that came out of the ocean, I would say don't wait too long between the time it is dead and the time that you eat it to actually eat it. I have not had whale. I have no interest in eating whale. It is illegal to hunt whales and to serve whale meat here in the United States. I think that's a very good law. I do believe there are some indigenous populations in Alaska that might still be allowed to hunt whales in a sustainable sense because it's their livelihood. But yeah, industrial scale whaling is definitely illegal. And I'm a vegetarian, so I don't even eat the animals that most people in the US eat. I don't even eat pigs or chickens or cows. Exotic meats are definitely out of my wheelhouse or whale house for that matter. I like whales that are alive. I like going whale watching. I like looking at whales. I like learning about whales. But I am definitely not... It is not within my personality to see an animal and be like, I want to eat that shit. See that thing right there? It's pretty cool. Imagine if I killed it and eat it. That would be even cooler. I would guess that whale meat is incredibly salty and incredibly fatty. I bet you chew on a piece of whale meat for like a half an hour. I don't know what part of the whale you could eat that would not be chewy and salty as fuck. Maybe that's some people's slice of whale cup of tea. Doesn't sound super appetizing to me. Loving the ball head. Thank you very much. I just shaved it yesterday, actually. Also just bashed it against a tree. I don't know if you can really see. But I'm 6'4", and sometimes I walk into trees. The same tree, actually. This tree really doesn't like me. Has a low-hanging branch. Bashed my fucking head into it twice in like 2 weeks. In the exact same spot. What is my opinion on the Bellsprout line in terms of character design? Damn. What a question. Well, first of all, I would say I don't think people talk about Bellsprout nearly as much as they should. Bellsprout is very cute. I think Bellsprout is a quintessential Gen 1 Pokemon. You know, they were trying to fill out the decks. They were thinking, okay, grass type, what are some cool plants out there? Okay, carnivorous plants, you know, the obvious choice is Venus flytrap. Yeah, it's kind of overdone. What about a pitcher plant? Okay, that's cool. What are we gonna do? Oh, give it fucking teeth? Yep. And then they did. And it's good. It's very simple, it's very straightforward. It's got that old school Pokemon charm to it. You know, it's one of those things that doesn't have a ton of thought put into the design, but it's not really a bad thing. You know, sometimes it's okay to have a really simple character. I would say Bellsprout's line is definitely that kind of character. I don't think a Pokemon like Bellsprout would be made in the modern day. Well, you know, maybe not. You know, they have Smoliv. Smoliv is just a little olive. There's really not much else going on there. And it's pretty great. I love Smoliv. See, Gen 9 had a lot of those, like, we're trying to pad out the Pokedex type designs. And I kind of miss those. You know, the past couple generations we've had sort of small regional Pokedexes, but all of the Pokemon seem to have a lot of thought and time put into them in terms of their concept and development. But what I liked about Gen 9 is that we had some Pokemon that were just like bird, tumbleweed, dung beetle. And like, I like that. I like the variety. You know, you can have giant prehistoric bike lizard that loves sandwiches and can fly and swim. And then you can just have pig. Handsome pig that smells good. So I like that kind of stuff. I like that variety. I like to have a little bit of both. I did. I'm actually enjoying Pokemon Sleep. I think it's actually very useful. And I got the first good sleep. I didn't sleep well at all the past 2 weekends. My dog was keeping me up all night. But last night I finally slept well. And I was rewarded when I woke up. My first good sleep in so many nights. And I woke up to a shiny Riolu. Oh. And I knew that you could catch shinies in this game, but I did not think I would find one so quickly. I don't love Riolu or Lucario as Pokemon. You know, they're not like my favorite, but I like shinies. And I was not expecting to find a shiny so soon. So I like Pokemon Sleep. It's fun. I was a little concerned at first because I was like, oh, I have to put it in my bed? I don't know if I want to have my phone in my bed with me, but I have enough room. I can put it off to the side. Just gotta make sure it doesn't get like covered up by anything, otherwise my phone gets really fucking hot. Giant squid are awesome. That going back to what we were talking about like how like I like deep sea aesthetics for my character design. I mean, the giant squid is like the epitome of like how much humans want to understand the world around us, but like there are certain things that we just can't, at least not yet. You know, like there are so many different species of animals that we can study and keep in captivity and research and breed and even change to meet our needs. But the giant squid is one of those things where it's just like, we're lucky if we can find one alive. Let alone, like, you know, living a normal, healthy life. We can study its behaviors and its patterns. Like, we know so little about them. All we can do is guess. It's like studying a prehistoric animal that's alive today. Like, we have to piece together context clues with other animals that it might be related to, and like, okay, oh, we found some sucker marks on the sides of sperm whales, so they probably are hunted by sperm whales, and like, okay, the few specimens that we have found indicate that they probably live for a very long time. They live in the very deep water. We still aren't sure quite how big they can get. Colossal squid are also cool. It's funny to me that the giant squid and the colossal squid, those are two different designations we decided to give. They're gonna just be constantly locked in a struggle for who is really the bigger squid. Just kidding. Squids don't care. Does the bald head reading I'm going to redraw my image for subjectively? No, I'm actually going to stick with using camera footage in our videos. I like that more. I think it ups the quality of our videos. I think it makes the content more engaging. And quite frankly, it's much easier to edit videos where I just use my face instead of, you know, stitching together all the sprites into little animations. Besides, I feel like the last sprite I made for subjectively was kind of uncannily looked too much like me. And at that point I was like, why don't I just use my actual face? And I think I like that better. How does a barrel-eye fish even exist? I mean, it exists in a world of pure darkness where hundreds of tons of water are constantly crushing it. That's the other cool thing about the bottom of the ocean. It's such a different environment. You know, you have to have a completely different set of adaptations to survive down there. And it makes for some animals that don't look like they're from our planet because we're really the most familiar with animals that share the same adaptations that we do. You know, eyes adapt to be able to see in light. You know, bodies that are designed to fight gravity so that, you know, we can stand up. Skin to protect us from sun rays and from damage to our vital organs. So animals that don't have those adaptations look very strange to us. Do I care for speculative biology? I do. Speculative biology is a lot of fun. I'm not a biologist, so my interest in speculative biology is more the narrative side of it. I like thinking hypothetically in terms of what kinds of stories you could create, which is why I like After Man. You know, I like it more for the story rather than like the discussion of whether or not that's feasible. So, you know, my favorite kinds of speculative biology are a little bit more far-fetched. Maybe they make a little less sense from a scientific perspective, but they make for a really cool story. Alien Biosphere series. I don't think I have. I think I've heard of that. Remember when I was a kid, I loved The Future is Wild. I didn't know that was what speculative biology was. Speculative evolution. But I did enjoy it a lot. All tomorrows, all yesterdays, Afterman. Those are all great. Love those illustrations. They're so weird and unique and memeable. What is my favorite part of drawing? For me, it's the concept and putting the idea together. I like that. That's a lot of fun. Honestly, this is kind of cringe, but my favorite part of drawing is making that last brushstroke and being like, ooh, this looks good. Like having it finished and looking at my finished piece and being like, oh, I love this. I think that's probably one of my favorite parts is looking at the finished product and being really happy with it. I also like stylizing reference. I like having, you know, a very complicated reference image, you know, so especially things like fabric and hair and kind of line decorating it, if you will, and just turning it into shapes and painting those shapes. I'm looking forward to doing that here with these crystals. I love painting crystals and rocks and stuff. Not rocks, I don't know why I said rocks. Crystals and fire in particular. Something that is lit internally and does really weird things with light and is very hard to capture in a realistic way, but is really fun to stylize. Do I have any games that I really like but don't talk about often? Well, we talk about League of Legends a lot. I really like Sea of Thieves, but I only just recently got into that. I really like, I've been playing Final Fantasy XIV again, that's a lot of fun. I like that game, I still haven't finished it, but I like Dredge, that was an incredible game. BioShock Infinite is probably my all-time favorite game, but I don't think I've ever made a video about it, if that's what you mean by talk about it. I love Skyrim. Skyrim was one of my favorite games growing up. I still enjoy it. TF2, I don't really play TF2 anymore, but I think that the art direction of TF2 was super inspirational to me growing up. Very much informed my modern drawing aesthetic. I'm gonna have to wrap up the stream pretty soon, unfortunately. I'll give it 15 more minutes. 1 o'clock I'll call the stream. Oh yes, the commission that I'm doing, actually the image that the client sent me is right down here in the corner. This Candy Night is what I'm drawing. Yes, it does have Artorias vibes. I actually was looking at some reference. Actually, you can see in the reference image that I'm using. In this reference image, this is Artorias' arm here. Yeah, it was a really cool idea. I was excited when this person reached out to me for the commission. Because, you know, sometimes I get commissions and I'm like, okay, sure. And, you know, it's a good commission, but I'm not super excited about the subject matter. And sometimes I get commissions like this one, and I'm like, oh, that's an awesome idea. This was one of those. Tips for color blending. Well, I think what I was talking about earlier when it came to handling light and form applies to color as well. You know, blending scares me. When I see new artists that talk about blending or shading, I don't like to hear that because you lose so much form and shape when you blend. So I think this is good because I love geometry. I love simplifying light and form into shape. So for example, like a beard, right? Hair. It's a lot of undefined form here, right? But you can, as an artist, simplify that into shapes. And, you know, you can turn a beard that in real life might be so amorphic that it doesn't really look like any shapes. You can find those little shapes in there and simplify the way light interacts with that beard into simple shapes. Same thing for faces, right? You can turn faces, which are usually smooth. Like if you look at my head, I have a pretty angular face. But you can see very clear shapes here where the light is hitting my head, right? See a strong light there. This is where my skull is closest to the light, so this is where it's brightest. Then I have my secondary light source because there's a light above me too. There's a big reflective light right on my bald dome here, right? So this side of my head is dark because it's away from here, but it is still getting some reflective light off of the light that's above me. So there's a big white shape here, kind of like a triangle. It's kind of like a pulled, stretched triangle. You could turn my ear into a bunch of little shapes. Like this ear is just like a triangle, like another triangle, kind of like a rounded edge triangle. Same thing down here, like the muscles. Simplify them into triangles, simplify them into squares, hexagons. And I don't love blending. I like blending is good here. So like Santa Claus's collar, right? That's made out of fur. So I can blend in some colors, and I don't blend them, I layer them, right? So if I'm drawing something like this, I get a good brush, go into my subjectively oil paint brushes, maybe I get like the textured wash brush. All right, and I start with my lightest tone, which would be like this orange. All right, so I put that down. And then I go into a darker color, so I grab this sort of like reddish brown, and I layer that over it so that they interact with each other, right? So now the orange is kind of coming through that brown a little bit, so you get that transition. And then I want an even darker color, so I get this sort of grayish, and I layer that over that. And now you have this nice transition from light to dark. And then if you want to convey texture, put some other colors in that dark there, right? Layer that over. And then the other thing is, like for this canvas, the lightest parts of the canvas, or the lightest parts of the characters, are actually the lightest parts of the canvas. If I changed this, the color of this canvas, Santa Claus's beard gets really dark because the lightest, I'm not actually painting those colors in, I'm leaving the canvas white, or I'm leaving it yellow. So I'm using the colors around me to inform my lightest lights and my darkest darks. So you can have that light show through and then paint over, and you layer. You don't do, because then watch this. So now watch, I have my Santa Claus, nice defined beard. Now if I do this, and I start blending, all of a sudden I lose all those nice shapes that I have. And you lose a lot of that geometry, a lot of that form. So I would say, as often as you can, avoid blending. Avoid smearing and smudging. Try it, and if you don't like it, then don't do this, but try this, because this is how I like to render color. Try painting shapes. Try finding a nice strong reference and find the shapes in the color. Find the shapes. So let's break this up into colors on my hand right here. Got a nice strong orange right where the light is hitting my hand the most. Then here it's almost kind of gray, where I have sort of the reflective light from the gray of my walls hitting against my wrist here. And then up where it's darkest, it's a little brown. So you can break that up into 3 shapes right now. You can make this into a big orange shape. You can make this like this. It's a gray shape. And then bam, this right here, that's its own shape. And that's that. And actually, you know what? That's probably a good place to end the stream, because like I said, I have to wrap it up. So thank you guys all so much for watching. I do hope you enjoyed the stream. I'll probably be doing some more streams this week because I have a lot of commission work that I need to get done. Might as well do that on stream. So if you'd like to come back and see some more, please feel free. Until then, guys, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.